and welcome back everyone to the video series dedicated show on MTV that just can't clip it in. That's right, we're talking about The Challenge Season 39 Battle for a New Champion Episode 2. Let's be real. These folks aren't going to be adding any significant amount of money into this prize fund anytime soon, and I'll tell you why as we go through this review and recap, starting with Big T winning against Jessica in the first elimination of the season, coming back to the challenge house. She's happy she won, don't get me wrong, but her main focus is making sure a man goes into this week's elimination. Speaking of which, we go to a conversation between two men, Jay and Chauncey, and from their conversation, we learn that there is maybe a US alliance with the house split down the middle of international players and the US players. Although Jay is trying to reassure Chauncey because we need to look out for everybody in the US alliance, we hear that Jay has a ton of alliances with everybody in the house. And coming into this season, I felt that Jay was going to have a ton of friends on the show, but kind of like what we saw in past seasons with Jay, he kind of stumbles, it gets messy, so on this season he has a lot of ducks that he needs to keep in a row, or it could get really bad for him. Now, Chauncey isn't playing any games this season. We know that he is a brand new father, he's ready to play, he's playing no games, and he wants to win to provide for his family, as well as getting that title of Challenge Champion, and he is very skeptical on Jay, and if he can actually trust him in this game. At one point, he even tells Jay that he didn't feel like he could fully trust him coming into the season. We wake up the next morning to see a kiss between Callum and Michelle, and we also see Huey and Olivia bonding about their upbringing, and I think this is an important part, how good of a social game he is playing at this moment. For him to have these one-on-one conversations with people and make them feel like I truly have your best interest at heart. I mean, we hear it from James and we hear it from Kieran later on in this episode, and I just feel like this is just a taste of Huey's game and how he's deciding to play this game. And I think Huey knows his strengths and weaknesses, and his strength is the social aspect. It kind of makes sense how he's able to sneak away from going into an elimination this week, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But now we get where everybody is donning their challenge gear, heading down to meet up with TJ for this week's daily challenge at the water called Ball Control. In Ball Control, players will have to transfer 23 balls from the water up to a raised platform and drop it down a tube. They'll make it up to the raised platform via a human ladder, and they will have 23 minutes to dispense 23 balls, or however many balls they can transfer within 23 minutes into the tube. Each ball is worth 2K. TJ mentioned if they get all 23 balls in 23 minutes or less, then he'll bank in the extra $4,000 to make it an even 50K added to the prize fund. The main catch here is that the balls have names on them, and the person whose name is on the ball has to be the one to drop it in the tube, meaning they have to get all 23 balls up to the raised platform, get everybody up to the raised platform at a certain point, and drop all the balls in. And they have to do all of that in 23 minutes to secure $50,000. When I heard all of the rules for this daily challenge, I said, there ain't no fucking way. All right, there is no way that they were going to be able to get all 23 balls in 23 balls, 1 minute per ball. No freaking way. No way. No how. I knew they were not going to bank $50,000, but I thought they would bank at least maybe a good chunk of change, maybe like 10K, maybe 15K. No, they get 6K. 3 people are able to dump their balls in this tube. The main points from this challenge and the people who have some notable performances, not for the better. We have Chauncey and Nerys who can't clip in. They're actually able to get up the human ladder to the point where they were trying to clip, but they just couldn't clip it in. Huey couldn't even make it up the human ladder at one point. Horacio is drinking too much salt water, as well as Olivia, who was able to clip in, but what she was able to clip in had James walking all over her. I mean, she was closer to the bottom end of their rope, and she probably has a ton of bruises after this challenge was over, because just having James standing on your shoulders and then on your head and everything, that was really rough. And then Melissa could have been the fourth person onto the raised platform, but once she got up to the top of the rope, she couldn't make the transfer from the top of the rope onto the platform. She even at one point said, "Pull me," and once Zara, Colleen, and Michelle started to pull her, she said, "Don't pull me," and kind of just froze up at the top. But by then, time had run out. I mean, this was an absolute disaster. But at the end of the day, they were able to add an extra $6,000. So now the prize fund is up to $306,000. But coming back to the challenge house, everybody has eyes for either Chauncey or Huey. Everybody's in agreement that it's going to be a men's elimination day. And now because Chauncey couldn't clip in, he's a target. And because Huey couldn't get up the rope, he's now a target. But now that people know how the voting goes, the main worry is whoever they nominate and vote into elimination, they have to make sure, like, who will they pick to go up against in the elimination, as well as what if they come back into the game. Now, I mentioned during the Jay and Chauncey chat in the beginning that there is a quote-unquote US alliance, yet there are some conversations between US alliance castmates that are highly considering voting Chauncey into the elimination, while international players like James and Kieran really like Huey and really want to vote in Chauncey. So it feels like the house's momentum is going towards Chauncey, which Raven does not like. We see at the bar scene that Raven is trying to tell Chauncey that people are saying your names, people that you think you're aligned with are highly considering sending you in, voting you in, and it feels like Raven is really trying to look out for Chauncey. You know, my feeling is that if this US alliance was real and they were trying to look out for their own cast members, one bad daily challenge wouldn't flip the whole vote to where their loyalty could easily be swayed. I feel like they were just waiting for Chauncey to kind of stumble a little bit. We heard from Nerys and the Challenge 38 Alliance back in the launch special, questioning whether they can trust Chauncey or not. Mariah and Raven seemed like they really felt like they could trust Chauncey, but everybody else in the Challenge 38 Alliance felt like maybe Chauncey isn't somebody that they can really work with. While still at the bar, everybody is pressuring Kyland and Melissa to kiss in front of everybody. Kyland does not like to show PDA, as well as this is the point where Melissa gets very upset with him. They have a conversation, and this is when Kyland tells Melissa that he has autism, not necessarily saying that not kissing her in front of everybody is due to his autism, but he just doesn't like to show PDA, he processes information differently, and that adds into the whole situation of him not kissing Melissa in front of everybody. They go back to the house, they're cuddling, and they end the night kind of doing some kissy kisses in bed with some cuddling. The next morning, we hear from Nerys and Olivia talk about Raven. They describe her as playing a desperate game, that they knew exactly the type of player and person she was. She's playing exactly how she did last season. Chauncey holds a US team meeting trying to tell them that I am fully on your side. I won't call anybody out in this room or in the US Alliance. I'll pick an international player. The problem here is I feel like Chauncey announcing that he wouldn't pick a US player kind of made the US players be like, okay, then we can send Chauncey in, and he said he wouldn't send us into elimination. He wouldn't call us out. So that kind of gives us a free pass. You know, I can keep my hands clean. If he comes back, then we'll say we're working with him still, but if not, then whoopsie daisy. Well, what doesn't help Chauncey's situation is the deliberation, because still at this point, it feels like it's either Huey or Chauncey, and Huey gives a really great deliberation speech while Chauncey does not. It's actually quite the opposite. Chauncey wants to start off by going down the line to each US member that he played with, asking, did I ever do you wrong? And he starts off with Horacio, and Horacio says, yes, you voted for me in season 38 at one point. And then he turned to Michelle, who also says, yes, you didn't have our backs back in season 38. Jay piled on it. Olivia piled on it. It was a hot mess, because now that kind of just solidified that Chauncey was definitely going to be the vote. After the deliberation and after Chauncey's speech backfired, that's when you have Nerys, Michelle, Olivia, Mariah, and Raven in the room at one point, basically saying, I'm convinced to vote Chauncey. and they're definitive that they're all voting Chauncey into the elimination. Raven says she would rather vote in Huey. She feels like she can still trust Chauncey, and then she gets up from the conversation in the room, heads out, and goes directly to talk to Kieran about how the vote is Chauncey. And now Kieran, hearing this information from Raven, goes to James, and they're thinking, okay, what if the person who gets voted into the elimination can only pick a player to go up against if they said their name? So now Kieran and James are planning on burn voting on each other. This sends red alarms with Kylan, who has done all of his homework on the challenge. He's watched all the seasons, has a ton of spreadsheets, want to take every single thing into account on possibilities of what happens if all the US players vote Chauncey, send him into elimination, yet none of the UK or international men say Chauncey's name, and they burn vote on each other, and then Chauncey is kind of pigeonholed into saying a US player's name. This sends pandemonium throughout the US alliance, because now they're all blaming Raven for taking that information to Kieran, saying that it's definitively going to be Chauncey sent in no matter what. They're freaking out. And they're freaking out and overthinking this game to the nth degree, because it does not matter, right? We go to the arena, Chauncey gets 18 votes, and that includes him voting for himself. James and Kieran burn voting each other, getting 1 vote each, and Huey gets 3 votes. So Chauncey is voted into elimination, and he instantly calls out James. He wants to take a shot at one of the UK members, one of the bigger UK men, and if he takes him out, then that proves that, hey, I just took out pretty much Goliath on the other side of the house. That's where Chauncey's mindset is going into this week's elimination against James in Might Light. The players will have to pick up a light one at a time and put it into the wall. They're trying to connect 3 lights in a row, whether it's diagonal or straight across. If you connect 3 lights in a row, that's a point. The most points after 3 rounds collectively will win back into the game, and the other player will be eliminated. Chauncey's stamina and speed are leagues ahead of James's stamina and speed, where his endurance is in the toilet. My goodness. After every single round, James was on the ground huffing and puffing, ground grabbing his knees, he's wheezing, Zara's on the sideline trying to tell him how to breathe. And the problem is that this isn't just about speed or stamina, it's also about strategy, and James was able to get the jump on Chauncey in the first 2 rounds. James was able to get 3 more points over Chauncey in the first round, taking a pretty commanding lead. Then he was just able to sneak by, getting 1 more point than Chauncey in the second round. So going into the final round, he had a 4-point lead over Chauncey, but luckily Chauncey had a lot more gas in the tank, and he was able to dominate the third round, but only by 3 points. The final score was 18-17, with James winning back into the game, and Chauncey was sadly eliminated from the season. It was really, really close. I feel like if Chauncey had a little bit more strategy to go along with that speed and stamina that he had in the first round, like if he could have gotten it really close in the first round and second round and absolutely dominated when James was on the verge of collapsing, I think Chauncey could have easily taken this one. But I feel like Chauncey went a little bit too quickly out of the gate and relied on his speed rather than the strategy at the end of the day. But James was able to win, and the international and UK side still have the numbers, where the US side loses a number, which I still don't know if this international and US alliance thing is actually a real thing, or this is just something in the game that they're kind of just playing with, because I don't know, it just seems like everybody's talking with everybody. Everybody has their own alliances with everyone else, and I don't know if I trust that this US alliance stuff is actually a real thing. But I guess we'll see how much of a real thing it is in the upcoming weeks and in the upcoming episodes. If it is, UK has a step up on the numbers against the US alliance, but we'll have to wait and see how that's all going to play out. But that is it for this week's episode from the Challenge Season 39 Battle for a New Champion. What did you think about this episode? Let me know down in the comment section below. What did you think about the Daily Challenge? What'd you think about the elimination, and are you sad to see Chauncey get eliminated from the season this early? Do you think it was the right move, or do you think it was the wrong move? Let me know down in the comment section below. I want to give a special shout out thank you to everyone who supports me over at patreon.com/angelcakevids. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who was watching this video up to this point. I'll be back really soon with more Challenge 39 content, more challenge content, more content in general. But until then, peace.